Hassan Sawaf. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for making the time. You are a very very busy man, busier than anyone I know. It's true. um, and and so I appreciate you taking a slice of your time. So I here's what I don't want to do. If we start talking about your background, we will never get to what you're doing today because you have such an intense, such a deep background. So how about we start from where you are, which is
Uh-huh.
we're always doing the most exciting thing now, right? So I'm sure
Yeah,
you're doing the most
very
exciting
much.
thing, right? All right now.
Yeah.
So let's start with that, and then we'll talk about the important milestones in your life. And you have lots of those, which is great. But as I said, if we start talking about those, we will never end because you have a massive background. So you are right now. You launched a company recently called
Yes.
AI Explain. Okay,
Yes.
and and I know that anything and everything that you do it, with 100% seriousness and it's meaningful and so forth. But this one is even more meaningful than usual because it has the word democratization in it, and I'm a
Hmm.
big fan of that. So
Hmm.
tell me about about AI Explain and what does it have to do with democratization in the context of technology?
I love it. So we actually pronounce it explain, like
Explain.
explaining things. Yes,
Hmm.
exactly. And the AI is twice in there. If you look into the name and how it's written in the beginning and in the middle.
Hmm.
In general, so what we want to do is we want to make the use of AI for anyone who wants to integrate AI in their workflows as easy and as frictionless as possible. To do so, we believe that we need to develop a technology, we need to develop a platform which makes it possible for anyone to contribute and utilize AI. What do I mean by that? I mean, I'm gonna take a picture of former experiences in computing and map it against AI. So, in the 70s and 80s,
Hmm.
the people who wanted to innovate using the computer needed to have deep knowledge about AI, about computing. Need to
Yep.
know how to start MS-DOS, how to or
Hmm.
CPM or Unix, and basically know the right commands to basically
Yep.
follow certain steps, so that basically the computer was doing the thing you need. In the 80s, graphical user interfaces came in.
Yep.
Graphical user interfaces made it possible that people who do not know the depth of of computing are able to innovate with computers.
Hmm.
So suddenly macOS and Windows and X Windows, if you remember the Unix
Yeah.
times and all of that, suddenly made computing accessible to everyone. So you don't need to go and find the specialists who can use a computer to make the computer work for you. You
Hmm.
can do it yourself. You can sit there with a keyboard, with a mouse, and drag things around, type the things you need, and make use of the computer. Similar thing, we have the situation right now with AI. AI is right now without the figuratively the graphical user interface. It's
Hmm.
still the command line interface. The people
Yep.
who know how to utilize AI need to have deep knowledge in AI. Um, it's getting easier and easier, but it's still not where it could be that everyone can use it, and
Yeah.
that's where we start. And this is where democratization starts. Democratization cannot be where you just basically speak to only a certain set of people only. You need to build some platform which can basically be utilized by everyone. Now, in the use of AI, if you want to utilize AI in your workflow, you have multiple steps you have to go through. We
Mhm.
have to we have some kind of sourcing step. The station in your journey is the sourcing of assets. You need to find the right data. You need to find the right models. You need to find the right things. You don't know how good they are at that point yet.
Yep.
Second step is you need to be able to evaluate them, understand, does this work for my use case? So you
Hmm.
need to be able to benchmark different models against each other. You need to benchmark even data and see how it works for you, and etc. Third step would be then build the solution, and it needs to be very simple, very self-explanatory. And then basically, when you build your thing, you can experiment with it, and when you're done, you press a button and it gets deployed. That's the fourth station. So after building, you have deploy.
Yep.
So it's discover, it's benchmark, it's
Hmm.
build, and it's deploy. These are the four stations, and this is basically what we're trying to enable. And now in each of these stations, you have the thing that the world already is using AI in many ways. Everyone is already building AI
Hmm.
capabilities. Some more in speech recognition, the other ones more in computer vision, the third one's in forecasting. But there is hundreds and hundreds, maybe thousands and thousands of companies which are doing unbelievable job. We need to basically make them all visible in that kind of platform to basically to enable the developer, and that basically is the second part of the
Hmm.
democratization. Today, when you go and think about who can I go to utilize AI, you go to a brand which is known to you. You go to a company which is one of the big tech companies, for example, or something like that.
Hmm.
Instead of going and saying, but there might be some company somewhere which is doing an unbelievable job, but no one heard about.
Hmm.
So we want to basically level the playing field and have all these assets available
Yeah.
and benchmarkable side by side, whether you are a small company, a single contributor, or a large corporation. And
Okay.
that's the second part of the democratization. The third part of the democratization is um, right now the market, because of this brand bias, yeah,
Hmm.
so because of this brand bias, only the large corporations or some of the maybe academic institutions hear about what the world needs in AI.
Hmm.
So the person who is super smart, working in their basement, working on really cool stuff, but at some point they're gonna be stuck because they don't hear from the world what they need, what the world needs, until basically someone basically develops it and writes a paper on it, and then they read it and then they imitate. So what if we allow the customers to directly put asks out there and basically have anyone in the community pick the job and do it, regardless whether it's a small or a large corporation, again in a fair manner. So this
Yeah.
is the third part of the democratization. And these are the things which we are right now focusing on. We have a platform which is covering the four stations I mentioned earlier. We have now thousands of scientists in our network to help us with solving the world's hardest problems. And we are looking for more and more. And the people who are basically solving these hard problems are not necessarily only the machine learners. You
Hmm.
have the smart people don't come in one shade. Smart people come in many, many colors, many, many shades, many, many
Hmm. Yeah.
backgrounds, and all of that. And we should benefit from that. We can benefit from that. The person who learned, I don't know, linguistic can be a machine learning
Yeah.
specialist. You give them the right tools in their hands.
Yeah.
The person who is psychology, same thing. And it doesn't matter what kind of background you have. If you have the right tools in your hand, you can actually do a lot of things.
Wow. Well, I'll tell you what. I am just describing that. I'm I'm impressed. I'm really impressed by the ambition because it's a big ambition, um, and the impact. I think the impact. It's not like it's going to work or not work. It's working already, right? Like anytime that two people connect that otherwise would not have been able to connect in the, let's call it, the status quo system, you have success, right? So that's the beauty of this thing. It feels to me like you can have successes ongoing. You don't have to like work very hard and either fail or succeed. And I think you're already succeeding. Is my point now. De facto. So the marketplace is really interesting, right? Because that's where everything exciting that needs to happen happens. That's
Mhm.
where the big and the small companies are sort of competing on a level, right? Whoever is has the better mousetrap or the better engine or the better process is going to win, hopefully. Um, and also the discovery that you talked about in terms
Hmm.
of I am somebody who's working on very passionately on this problem, and I don't have the exposure that an Amazon or a Google or a Facebook or an Apple has, and so you enable me to. But let's do this. Let's do a deeper dive and following sense. Let's pick one problem, specific problem, and let's talk maybe a little bit about how in the old way it would have been solved, and how in your new, more exciting, more let's call flatter, more democratic way it would be solved. It could be something like, okay, somebody who is looking for an OCR solution or speech recognition solution. Let's just pick something that probably is you're more informed because you have firsthand.
Happy,
Yeah.
happy to. So let's see. So, by the way, I want to comment on one of the things you just said. I mean, let the best win. I mean, uh, actually, there is no best in anything, really. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, the best companies. I mean, they are best today. They are not the best tomorrow. Even the large corporations, they're the best today and not best tomorrow. We need to basically keep an eye. I mean, we have an advantage as users of AI. We have an advantage. They are competing against each other, everyone, and this
Mm-hmm.
is a good thing. We want to support that competition and
Mm-hmm.
benefit from the result. So today Google might be the best, tomorrow might be Amazon, the day
Yeah.
after tomorrow Microsoft. We need to basically be open-minded to be able to exchange
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
one provider with the next.
I think
So
if I just may interject,
one, yeah,
so let's say Amazon has a solution
yeah,
and some small company has a solution, and it just so happens that Amazon solution is better. That's fine,
hmm,
right?
hmm,
If in some other problem, some small company has a better solution, so it's the best solution for a specific problem. Probably is the way
hmm,
to perhaps
yeah,
be more
yeah,
aligned with what your ethos is.
yeah.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
So my thought is, I mean, even if you go with Amazon, for example, if a solution is really good and you go with Amazon, you should
Hmm.
actually be able to, you should not be getting stuck to using only Amazon. You should be able
Hmm.
to switch from Amazon to Google to the small provider somewhere and so forth in a click of a button. Today, transforming a solution from one provider to the next is a process. It's an expensive process,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
this is important that we need to enable for the sake of innovation, for the sake of fairness, for the sake of democracy. In this case, we need to enable everyone to do that in a
Yep.
click of a
Yeah.
button.
Yeah.
So
So
I can tell.
before, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
go.
I'm sorry.
Uh,
Because you made this is an
mhm,
important point. I don't want to get back to it, which is the following: that sometimes, um, let's just keep on talking about Amazon. Amazon has something
mhm,
that is a solution to something. I don't know, search or whatever it may be. That is
mhm,
not as good as another one, right?
mhm,
But the decision, somebody could still make the decision to go with Amazon just because it's part of an ecosystem. I think that's the point you're making, right? They're stuck, right? And
mhm,
so if we want to solve it and not be naive about it, we have to recognize sort of the ecosystem aspect of it. And what you're saying, what I heard you say is that you're trying to enable interoperability between services, right?
100%. Yes.
That
100.
way nobody's stuck artificially just because they're part of a system, and it's very hard for them to take this new beautiful thing that they just stumbled into and make it
Mhm.
part of an ecosystem. So I wanted to make sure that that the audience didn't miss that point. It's an important point.
No, that's
Yeah.
exactly right, Ahmad. And I think the I mean, the suppliers of AI are not necessarily malicious to try
Yeah.
to do that in a malicious way. But
Yep.
because there is no standards, because
Yep.
there is no, um, it's difficult to transition from one to the next, and and we can help. We can basically build. We are actually to make things comparable, to be able to test in a fair way,
Hmm.
benchmark in a
Hmm.
fair way engines against each other. We implemented like a normalizing,
Mm.
like a platform, how do you say that? One API basically, which speaks to all the I mean, like the
Hmm.
underlying APIs in such a way that you need to worry only about one API, and then
Yeah.
basically all
You
the
abstract from yeah.
recognition providers, they basically come with their own APIs with their own features, and we basically optimize the communication with the customers through our API. That way, when you basically think that you need to switch, we might tell you, okay, when you switch, you might lose the one feature, but you win the other two features and so forth. But at the end
Mm,
of the day,
mhm,
you are making an informed decision
mm,
what
mhm,
you're benefiting from it. And you switch for the quality, for the cost, for the speed, whatever the metric is which is relevant to you, we benchmark for you. So I have a story to tell about a company down in Los Angeles. They're
mhm,
building a really cool product. Their product is a little robot which speaks to children, basically similar to an Alexa device,
mhm,
but they have their own user experience, which is specifically developed for children, and in particular children with on the spectrum.
mhm,
So they have multiple. There's multiple challenges here. So speech recognition is one problem, but also the dialogue and how to educate the child and how to behave. And there's some kind of psychology necessary, like understanding the
yep,
psychology of the child.
yep,
Education is a component of it. So the team in LA, they're doing an unbelievable job in building basically a product out of this. They're called Embodied. Their product is called Moxie, a very, very interesting company. So they started using an off-the-shelf, state-of-the-art speech recognition engine and measured basically, I mean, and basically implemented their dialogue system around it and all of that. Now, you would expect that taking one of these big guys, speech recognition engine, is going
mm,
to do an unbelievable job. And unfortunately, that was not true for them.
mm,
So they had basically, you can say that about half of the conversation was, I mean, like the utterances were not
mm,
recognized as well as they wanted to be.
mhm,
And they turned out that they needed to, I mean, and they were not aware of it until we basically sat down and did the benchmarking together and basically figured out, wait a second, there must be something which we need to implement in the dialogue side to cover for the errors which are
mm,
happening on the speech
mhm,
recognition side.
mhm,
Now they measured also the other providers. Turns out that other providers are better, and then they can basically switch and change to whatever provider they want because they are using a layer which is allowing them to do so. What they also
mhm,
decided
mhm,
is
mhm,
building their own speech recognition engine because there's certain nuances and relevant audible features they need to actually make use of. But if
mhm,
someone else is doing the speech recognition, they basically lose that,
mhm.
like
Yep,
tone and other things, and how
sure.
the kid is basically behaving from the audible side of things. I mean, this is all missing, and now they're starting to develop with us the speech recognition capability
Yeah.
for them. So it's going to be a specific speech recognition. Now, the advantage of us having like a large set of specialists in our network helps us to find the right people who have the passion to help children in of that group and are very experienced. I mean, tens of years of experience in speech recognition. So we can now basically put our hands together and develop the best solution out there. So
That's
this is an example. So they started with a provider,
yep.
and then they saw, okay, what other providers are there? So they sourced other providers. Then they did the benchmarking. They figured out, okay, we need to potentially switch here, or basically tell the provider which is giving us the
Yep.
service to do better job.
Yeah.
And then now they build the solution. Now they're also saying, okay, you know what? Maybe we should build a new capability, the
Yeah.
first step, so to say. And now and it's deployed and they're using it. So this is
Yeah.
basically the story.
No,
And
that's a great story because I think it's interesting in the following sense in many ways. But here's one thing I just picked up as you were talking,
Mhm.
which is um, if there wasn't an Amazon or a Google, right, where they could start somewhere, right, they would have probably thought that this is just too hard. So they started somewhere, and
True.
it was an easy way to start, right? And
Mhm.
then they said, "Oh, maybe we can figure out now." Now they're sort of energized. It's a possible thing to do. They can see it. They can feel it, right?
Hmm.
It's not perfect, but it's getting there, right? So my point really is that it's interesting how these big companies sometimes they serve as as sort of a bridge towards a better solution, because they allow you to do certain things in a cheap way, and then you can maybe show it to an investor and say, we need your money so that we can go to the next level. The next level in your case was, okay, maybe there are some other vendors. And then the
Hmm.
next level after that is create your own speech recognition. So
Hmm.
that it's interesting how a dominating company enabled, in this case, right,
Hmm.
companies to do something, in this case, do something on their own, right?
Yeah.
And you are playing a massive role there in the middle, because you're enabling that journey,
Hmm.
right? That
Yeah,
journey.
but we want to also, and I think for some other use cases, I can tell another story in a moment about this. Other use cases, they um, might actually want to do the prototype building on our platform as well,
Hmm.
because they can exchange.
Right,
Sometimes it is good to use multiple vendors at once,
right.
competingly.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
whether it's
yeah.
Google or Microsoft and Google, Microsoft, Amazon, AppTech, Rev AI, other engines, all at the same time. So
Yeah,
we have
absolutely.
we have this other customer
Hmm.
which is doing subtitling for Japan. No, I'm sorry. What am I saying? It's dubbing actually
Mm.
for Japanese movies to Arabic.
Hmm.
And initially, we were thinking maybe we can find one company which can do the translation altogether, end to end. And
Hang on, hang on. So I understand, because it sounds really interesting, right?
yeah,
So, so the original language is Japanese.
Japanese.
Okay, and the dubbing, the result is the movie with the folks speaking in Arabic, so to speak.
Yes,
Right.
exactly.
Okay. Just want to understand what
So
the final product is, and so go on.
yeah, and initially, I mean, they were doing and still doing that since the 80s. They're doing this in with humans. I mean,
Hmm.
human were doing the translation.
Hmm.
Human, which linguists, which basically speak these two languages, are not as easily to find, but
Yeah.
and the content is not little. I mean, it's the
Hmm.
company Spacetoon in the Middle East,
Mm.
and
What's that name again?
so Spacetoon.
Space Tunes. Go ahead.
Mhm.
Space Tunes.
Spacetoon. Uh-huh. And they're very well known for, I mean, I mean, in the Middle East, I mean, they are basically similar to, let me see, maybe the Cartoon Network in the
Mm.
US, similar.
Mm. Hmm.
They have hundreds of millions of viewers and so forth. And the content which is coming from Japan, I mean, they're specializing on that kind of content, is getting more and more. And now they are going into different ways also on how to present content to the users. It's not only like regular TV, the classical TV, but now
Mm.
they're going into the
Hmm.
on-demand things and all of that. So the content is growing. The amount
Yep.
of data
Yep.
which needs to be worked on is growing, and they're not able to do it with the few. That's one problem. Problem number two is that what the people they used for dubbing in the 80s are not as young as they used to be at that point. Their voices are changing. The character is not the same anymore like it was before. Some people are even older and want to retire. I mean, they're like, some of them are in their 70s and 80s, literally, and they
But the
want to.
characters themselves didn't age, right? It's people.
No, the characters are still the same. Exactly, they're cartoon characters. Exactly. So they asked us, okay, can you help us with preserving that
Mm.
voice?
Mm.
And
Mm.
we built basically text to speech capabilities with
Wow.
them.
Okay.
So you can do that with off the shelf providers. Um, but they were not happy with the results
Okay.
because they were saying
Pause. Can,
the emotional.
I understand, but pause. Hang on a second. I don't think people are gonna believe what you're saying, in the sense that it's amazing. So what you're saying is that you want to take something that was in Japanese, and
Uh-huh,
you want to produce audio that
uh-huh,
was produced by software.
uh-huh.
Is that right?
That's
The
correct.
dubbing is done by software. So for you, this is probably commonplace, but this is staggering, and I don't think people have caught that. I was thinking like, wait a minute. So you transcribe and you give it to people to read, but no, that's not it. You're doing
No,
an actual
yeah.
It takes the
The
audio
voice up.
and
Yeah,
then it produces audio. And
yeah,
what you're saying is that you want to conserve the voices which are aging, and you want to create basic so that hopefully at some point it becomes so good that you can't tell that it was software. And
exactly.
that's
So
what you're doing. How far are you guys from or how close are we to solving this problem, you think?
So I'll tell you that the problem is more easily solvable if the content is very how do you say there is no emotions play no role. I mean, for example,
Mm,
what typically
mm,
people use is this process: speech recognition, translation, and text to speech, basically chained with behind each other.
mm,
For example, for documentaries, emotion when you hear documentaries, there
mm.
is no emotion involved.
That's true.
You're relatively straightforward and all of that. The problem in show business is there is nuances which need to be implemented as well, which make it more complicated. Emotions have to be transferred as well. For example,
Mm.
it's a happy sentence, it can't be translated into a neutral sentence or a sad sentence, because I mean, you're basically messing up the stylistic element here. What you also don't need to be worrying about is something: the actor might actually be mumbling on purpose, not because the speech recognition is or
It's
the
part of it. Yeah. It's
it's
part of the
part of
effect.
the
Yeah. Yeah.
acting, part of the
Yes.
acting, or
Mm,
accents have to be
mm,
transferred as well. So this is
mm,
what makes dubbing for show business complicated. Now, what you can do is, if you know about all these things, if you collaborate together tightly together with these networks and the content developers, you can actually build models even for that. And that's what
mm.
we did
Oh,
for Space
okay.
Tune. So
Okay.
when you have basically someone emotionally in on a sad side speaking in Japanese, we recognize that the same way like we are recognizing the speech recognition. We embed that in some kind of structures and give that basically further to the text to speech to speak a certain portion, phrase, etc. In that emotion as well. So this is basically what made it interesting for them to go that route. Otherwise, I mean, they were testing text to speech technology, which gotten really good, right? I mean, you and
Yeah.
I know that the text to
Yeah.
speech technology used to be in a place where it sounded very robotic. Today, I mean, if you listen to Alexa speaking and stuff like that,
Yeah.
it's quite good,
Yeah. Yeah.
but
It's
it's
amazing.
not good enough for the. It was still not good enough for the
No,
show
no,
business.
it's totally a new level, right? Of
Yeah,
complexity. Totally
yeah,
new level.
yeah.
I was just thinking like, well, first of all, these folks have been doing it manually for a while, right?
Many
And so
years.
they
Yes.
know they probably have a lot of knowledge about things to watch out for or
Hmm.
problems and so on. I was just thinking about there are in some cult, I don't know. So I speak Arabic, you speak Arabic, right? I speak
Hmm.
German, right? I
Hmm.
speak French,
Hmm.
speak English, and so we are privileged in this, and we speak them like fluently, right? These are
Hmm.
things that it's not like a third language or second language. These are all first languages in a sense, right? And so we're privileged in the sense that since we are deep into each one of those languages, we are aware of the fact that a language is like a gestalt, right? It's not just a language; it's a way of
Very
being,
true.
right? When you're
Very
speaking
true.
Arabic, you are living in a different world than when you speak German or when you speak
Very true.
English, right?
Very true.
So translating is very tricky because sometimes there are certain emotions that you can't
100.
translate or
100.
expressions, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
yalla, right? How do you say that in English? You can approximate it, and there are other things that you can just can't translate, right?
Yeah.
But what's interesting here is that probably you can do 80-90% of what needs to be done, and the rest of the problems are like they're still there even with manual, right?
Very
Because
true.
okay, you can't
Very
really translate linearly, but that's
true.
that's a fascinating problem because it brings in so
Yeah.
many interesting things and difficult
So
things.
you're saying there. I mean, you're saying it. I mean, language. I mean, you can say the same sentence in different melodies, even in English,
True,
actually,
true, yeah, that's
and
true,
they mean different things. It
that's
might be
true.
a question, the same sequence of words. It might be a
Hmm.
question, might be a statement, might be something you tell a person to do. What is it called? Imperative. Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, it really depends on the sentence melody, and the sentence melody is not the same in different languages. For Arabic, it's different than it's for English.
Yeah.
For English, it's different than it's for Chinese, etc., etc.
Yeah.
So, and these nuances are super important. Actually, even for day-to-day
Yeah.
language, it's not only show business, it's
That's
not
true.
only
That's true.
entertainment, right? So,
That's
yeah,
true.
and
That's true.
that's and now we're
Yes.
getting into a place where, I mean, if we're building these models which are going beyond the spoken word, then
Hmm.
basically we can start understanding cultures better, also from the technical perspective. I mean, tomorrow and at
Yeah.
some point, I hope that there is devices similar to the Echo devices or the Google Home devices, which can actually even capture that at some point and
Mm.
help us with our daily lives even better. Tomorrow, I think it's not going to be devices which are somewhere in our room. There might be a chance that we will wear these devices on
Yeah.
our face
Yeah.
as
No,
well,
I
or
don't.
something like that. Yeah,
Yeah. I don't think. I don't even think that we can imagine what's going to happen, right? I
yeah,
mean, because I'm always thinking like, okay, let's say this is the year 2000. Okay, I don't think there was a way for us to imagine the year 2020 to 21,
no,
right? I mean, if you look at it, everything was all the steps made sense. There was no
mhm,
quantum leap as such, right?
very
At no
true.
point did it say, but the path is just. I mean, I wouldn't have thought about for some social media in the year 2000 that we would be immersed in it. We would spend a lot of time building virtual relationships with folks and meaningful. They are not meaningless. They are meaningful. That is
Hmm.
beyond our imagination, right? At 2000,
Very true.
and
Very
I
true.
wonder, what is the equivalent of that for 2040. Um,
Right.
and so it's that I always think that the best way to spend your time really is to do the kinds of things you're doing, which is to enable
Hmm.
folks to create that bridge between now and the future, as
100%.
opposed to like painting visions about, hey, this is how it's going to be.